Coming up on Network Africa, Pope Francis visits Egypt with the aim of mending ties with Islam. Kenya's opposition alliance picks Raila Odinga as its presidential candidate. And Senegal's St. Louis City comes alive for the annual Jazz Festival. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Temitope Fagbemi. Pope Francis has arrived in the Egyptian capital Cairo to start a 72-hour trip in the country. Ahead of the visit, the Pope says he hopes that his trip will support the region's Christians and send a message of brotherhood to Muslims. Egyptian Christians have been targeted by jihadists with a recent attack on Palm Sunday, killing dozens of people. The Pope is scheduled to meet Muslims and Christian leaders before visiting a church that was bombed in December. So let's get more on this story from the VOA's Heather Murdoch, who joins us live from Cairo. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
What is the mood like in Egypt as Pope Francis visits the country?
Well, before I got here, there was quite a bit of anticipation and excitement by many people because Pope's visit will show, as they were saying, that Egypt is safe, and Egypt is a place that someone as famous and Christian as he can come to. Now that he's here, there is a lot of tension on the street. A lot of families are staying indoors, and security forces are out en masse.
Now, we understand that the Pope says that he's not going to be using an armored car despite the security concerns in the country. What more can you tell us about the security measures that have been put in place to ensure his safety?
Well, it appears that the entire Egyptian security forces are on the streets of Cairo right now. I'm sure I'm exaggerating, but there are a lot of soldiers and police out. The Vatican Embassy, all of the streets of the Vatican Embassy have been closed down. And as, you know, a head of state would, whenever he's moving, they're shutting down roads and stopping traffic.
We understand that the Pope is seeking to improve relations with Muslims on this visit to the country. Just how easy will this be, Heather?
Well, interfaith relations in Egypt are kind of unique. I mean, there's not a tremendous amount of sectarian violence. Average Egyptians, Christians and Muslims, get along fine. But there's a systematic problem that Christians feel discriminated against in professionally, in government positions, and also it's sort of ideologically they feel that they get harassed. So there's some complaints in the Christian community about this. And being a minority, they're not necessarily always a part of the Egyptian movements, which are so driven by Islam. So there's a lot of work to be done, but this is not to say Christians and Muslims are fighting on the streets, with the exception of the extremists, like the Islamic State militants that have attacked them recently.
So do you think the Pope's visit will address any of these issues that you talked about, Heather?
Pardon?
I said, do you think the Pope's visit will address any of these issues, the issue of discrimination that you talked about?
I do hope so, and I think so, and I think people are very hopeful that it will sort of start a dialogue that has actually kind of already begun. The current president of Egypt is very well liked in the Christian community, has actually visited a church. So this might be a time for Egypt to start to address these issues, and the Pope's visit might be a catalyst.
A 3-month state of emergency is in place in Egypt in the wake of the Palm Sunday bombings. Do Christians feel any safer after these attacks? Are they satisfied with what the government is doing so far to protect churches?
Well, during the month of April, a lot of the Easter celebrations were canceled because of these attacks. So certainly there is still fear, and it's, I think, a very real fear. And, of course, there are complaints about the security forces not doing enough, although the bombings were all stopped by security forces before the bombers, before they got into the churches. at the same time, as I mentioned before, the Christian community here is very supportive of President Sisi and his hardline stance against Islamist militants. So I don't think that they're willing to blame the government for the Islamist militants' attacks.
Here's Heather Murdoch. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you.
In other news, 2 more people have died from an unknown illness that infected people who attended a funeral earlier this week in Liberia's Sinoe County, southeast of the capital, Monrovia. The deaths bring the total to 11. 5 people remain in isolation and 4 others have been discharged after being stabilized. The authorities, however, say this is not another Ebola outbreak. Further tests have yet to show the cause of the strange illness, but the health ministry plans to send more blood specimens to laboratories outside the country, including in the United States, which has the capacity to identify the cause of the infection. Officials have advised the public to observe precautions implemented during the recent Ebola outbreak, including washing of hands. Tanzanian President John Magufuli has sacked nearly 10,000 civil servants for holding fake education certificates. The president was reacting to a report by a task force listing 9,932 government employees with dubious secondary school qualifications. Now, that's just over 2% of the country's civil servants. The civil servants may also be prosecuted and, if found guilty of fraud, can face up to 7 years in jail. The investigation only looked at secondary school qualifications of officials in local government, public institutions and government agencies, and has not examined university degree certificates. In Central Africa, a UN peacekeeper in the Democratic Republic of Congo has been suspended over allegations that he had a child with an underage girl. Under Congolese law, anyone under 18 is considered a minor. The military observer is among 5 peacekeepers accused of acts of sexual abuse and exploitation in the first 3 months of 2017. UN peacekeeping missions have been hit by a raft of child sex abuse scandals. A 33-year-old South African man accused of planning a series of assassinations has appeared at the Johannesburg Magistrate Court today on a provisional charge of conspiracy to commit murder. Elvis Ramos-Abudi, who lives near Pretoria, was arrested on Wednesday by the Priority Crimes Unit of the South African Police following a 6-month-long investigation. The alleged plot by the suspect, who is allegedly a founding member of one anti-state capture death squad, involves soliciting donations to the tune of 140 million rand to facilitate the assassination of cabinet ministers and VIPs, including the president and his son.
As the state, that's the information we have. As you might be aware that investigations are still in progress, and we'll await then the finalization of such investigations. But at this point, yes, we can confirm as the NPA that that's the information we received from the investigation team of the Hawks, and hence we've placed the matter on the roll today